Hello, loves. Today I have compiled quite a few good stories. Let's get started. Story: Best Friend but Only in Crisis. Myself, 28 years old. 28 years old, my best friend B have known each other since we were about 12. I was the new kid, befriended by her friends, which led to us becoming genuine friends closer to the 8th grade. We both have unhealthy dynamics with our families. Playing parent to our siblings, toxic relationship modeling, etc. Without getting too winded, we both put ourselves into therapy and medicated at some point to improve our lives. I got kicked out during HS, finished school boyfriend at the time's mom took me in, and left shortly after. I've moved around a bunch but always came back every 2 years to visit my friends and brothers, allowing me to slowly repair my relationship with my parents. She remained a pillar for her family. She only moved out of the family home once they were getting evicted. I happened to be moving back in town then, so it was her and I in a flat. Throughout our friendship, B often projects much of her anger in my direction. As a teen, my mother would ask why I was still friends with her because of how much I would cry at the things she said to me. She punched me in the 7th grade because I said I had never been punched. It was awful during her birthday month, which she shares with a brother, and a family holiday. I still remember how hurt I was and how much I would cry. Her behavior was heavy, nothing physical during HS, but a lot of, "I hate you, you are awful and annoying," excluding me with our friends who would tell me the things she said about me to them, etc. We rode the bus together, so it was bullying from the start to the end of the day. Then she would clock back and act like nothing once her month had concluded. This is not to say we did not have extraordinary times during HS, this was just always such a hard thing to deal with at a young age. I cannot explain why we remained friends outside of I loved her and I felt for her. While our home lives were still different, we struggled in them, and I knew she needed a friend. Plus, you know those friends you pass notes and notebooks to in the hall, who you know you can come out to and be safe. That was her. It stopped after HS. I saw her maybe once a month, but it was always a blast. We would speak in memes and YouTube videos mostly. Until I left the state, and at this point, she was my best friend. Despite it all, she was my person. But she didn't answer much, and my insecurities prevented me from reaching out too much with the lack of response. This continued through 3 moves, me visiting every 2 years, her having minimal contact, and never visiting. During visits, she would bail or not answer requests because she had other plans. It hurt because I always gave at least 4 months' notice to my visit and would text our friend chats excitedly the days before. This comes to a head now, where in 2021, I was going through a DV situation and headed back to my family. She was my rock during the hardest part of my split. Hospitalized, B stayed on the phone with me, and I am eternally grateful. I also hold immense guilt for having her share that painful experience with me. B has usually gotten very close to people who are close to me. She doesn't introduce me to her friends, but after I started dating and making local friends, I realized how uncomfortable I was with how she gets with my friends. To the point that an ex-GF of mine has essentially replaced me. I have been relentlessly working on myself through therapy and self-help books, so I decided to talk to her about the harm I felt in HS and how I wanted us to be better communicators moving forward. Well, I was going through a lot at the time, but we mostly moved on from it. Until this year, dubbed the year I hold others accountable to the boundaries we have established. Thus, I reached out around February-March, telling her I felt like a backburner friend and how deeply it hurt me. She responded quite kindly, acknowledging that she treats me that way and intends to work on it. The last year or 2 have been rough ones for her family. Truly, I gave them money to alleviate, but there isn't much I can do. I know it is taking a toll on her. Her drinking and drug usage show it. I was feeling very desperate to help when my own situation came up, and it definitely ate into my brain. I tried reaching out more, but was met with little in return. During this time, that ex of mine was posting and texting me about how B and her hang out so much and talk every day. This stung. Especially given the last conversation we had about our friendship. The longer I reflected over the past few months, the more I realized she only paid attention to me during a crisis. I have to be practically suicidal for her to take my pain seriously. I refuse to live that way. That is the past. Crisis and catastrophe are no longer something in my everyday life, and I cannot hang myself up on someone who only answers in the fire. I have barely heard from her since I moved again. We had a call she would bail, so I didn't wait at home for it. The next day, she texted, apologizing that she had fallen asleep but would call when she felt better. I texted back that was a week ago. She doesn't answer my text, she'll ignore what I ask and just ask her own questions, responding she's happy I am fine. I know she's not okay. I know she is being dangerous with her substance use. I know I cannot keep holding her in such a high regard for the sake of my growth. I learned how to crochet and made her basket. I was to send it to her and maybe write a letter expressing my love and how I hope we can find a new friendship in a different form sometime in the future. And then I feel mad. Then sad. What should I do? Story: partner's relationship with my parents. My partner and I have been together for 6 years. Something traumatic happened to us 3 years in when our relationship was rocky and we went to stay with my parents. My partner is from a really different background from mine and feels I lied to them about where I was from. This background clashes with their values. After a lot of talking, my partner doesn't want anything to do with my family. I don't agree with the way they view my family, but my partner thinks because I have been brought up with them, I don't see it. They feel extremely strongly about this, to the point they say it has ruined their view of the world to have seen them. I don't want to go into too much detail, as I'm worried they may see this, but there was no abuse from my parents. They are very loving, kind, generous, and accepting queer people who genuinely want the best for everyone they meet. The rockiness in our relationship came from bad communication and my passive-aggressive behavior. They say they are okay with me having a relationship with my parents, but they absolutely do not want to be part of their lives. I respect that, and although it has been difficult and I can't say I have always been understanding, I feel I am okay with that aspect of things now. They had a lot of stress in their life and had a low mood from this. Because of their mental state at the time, I said I agreed with them about how they felt about my parents. I really know this wasn't the right thing to do, but I didn't know what to do. They were suicidal and would not speak to anyone, including their friends, a counselor, a priest, or an anonymous helpline. I felt stuck and I know it wasn't right. Now they are doing much better. I have kept in touch with my parents through text, but they think we broke up and that I am just living on my own, getting on with things. My partner wants a future together, and really, despite the shitty things before, it is everything that I thought I wanted. The problem I have now is that I genuinely don't know how our situation is going to work long term. I think in the heat of it all, I thought I could just keep these parts of my life separate, and I was happy to accept that. I feel sad that I don't see my family as much, and when I said I wanted to see my mom, my partner was so distressed by it that they said they would go to a hotel to stay because they didn't know how they were going to face me when I came back. They also wanted us to spend Christmas apart and alone because I would likely be phoning them. I should add that it isn't just a problem with my family, as they are fine with other members and actually really like them. It is my parents specifically. Things at the moment between us are far better, and they seem to be in a much better place mentally, and some of the previous stressful situations have improved. However, I feel like I am going to ruin things by bringing this topic up. Also, I have done the wrong thing because I have, in a way, enabled them to think that way about my family, who love me very much. I feel like a terrible daughter, and if anything, the whole situation has made me feel a stronger love for my parents, and I feel even more in disagreement with how my partner feels. I know this sounds crazy, and to be honest, it has been awful, but I genuinely didn't know what to do. I really felt like they were going to do something serious. I know the answer to this is communication with them and not the internet, but I guess I just want some advice or opinions on how you navigate a relationship when your partner doesn't want to be part of your family. I want to know how I can make this work long term if I can, and how I can make both of our wishes and values be protected. I absolutely do not want my partner to go against their values for me. I also feel terrible for my parents, and although they don't ask too many questions at the moment because they think I'm busy with my career in another part of the country, I really don't know how I am going to do this long term. I feel completely stuck and like I am being made to choose between people who I love. My partner has no family and no one else, and to leave them would be really, and literally, leaving them alone in the world, and I just can't do that either. Story: AITA for ending my 10-year friendship. I am 21 years old, have just moved into an apartment with 21 years old my boyfriend and 21 years old friend. Now, my friend probably lasted about 2 days living here if I am being honest before she took off to her parents' house saying that she was homesick. I totally understood that and said it was okay, but for her to keep us updated on her situation because all three of us had a responsibility to the apartment. A week goes by and no word from her, so I text her again asking what was going on. She says that she is going back, which she does, but only for another day. After coming back she slept here, but the next day took off again. This keeps going for the whole month of June. I don't see her and I give her space so that she can relax. By the month of July, she says that she has to talk to us and that it is important. We schedule a day for her to come over and talk with us. She bails last minute and says she can't make it because she doesn't have the money for an Uber. Now we finally are able to talk over the phone and she tells us that she is not going to attend university and that she is not coming back to the apartment. She says that she missed her friends from work and her family. I totally understand the family part. My dad is in jail as of recently and I lost 3 family members that I have been able to grieve properly because they are in another country, but at the same time, they are a 30-minute drive away. Now I live in a big state, so those drives are basically going down the road. The next week, we were confronted by her sister. Insults were thrown around all while Jane did not say a word for her case. We were accused of kicking her out, which we did not do. We have the messages and audio evidence of her saying she is willingly moving out. We were accused of saying insults and making her miserable, but the funniest thing is that all of this was coming out of her sister and not Jane. We had a second meeting at her house, which is where we came to an agreement. But not before her mother blamed me for making her move out. I did not force her to make this decision and I constantly reminded her that she could say no if she wasn't ready, which she said she was ready to move out. It also earned a remark from her mom saying that because she was the baby of the family it was my fault for making her do this. Keep in mind we are all turning 22 this year. So yes, I am angry that she said nothing between the interactions we had with our families. I am angry that she watched as her family called me a bad friend, a toxic friend, being insulted by her sister as she stood behind her not even meeting my eyes, calling me a liar and saying I kicked her out, and taking no responsibility for the legal contract that she willingly signed. Story: AITA for wanting to distance from my mom. There's a lot of context, so bear with the lack of. My fiancé, 28-year-old, and I am 29-year-old, had our first in 2022, second in December 2024. At first my mother, 53-year-old, was over the moon, and helped a lot the first 6 months of the firstborn. She was going through a split up with her ex, so she really enjoyed spending time and helping. Some context: my mom and dad separated 10 years ago, not a good marriage and definitely shouldn't have lasted, but she thought it would be best to wait until brother and I graduated, but that just added to toxicity. Fast forward to now, after her split up, she's full on midlife crisis mode. She spends every weekend going to bars with a group, goes on a boat, spends a lot of her money on going out, Temu, etc. There's been times where we would ask for her help with the kids to give us a break, but we'll see what she can do. Now, pause, because I see this often. We do not milk her for babysitting, and I want any comments regarding pay for daycare, save it. Daycare is not optional or really needed. I usually have to ask her to come see them to just spend time together. If it wasn't for me, I know weeks could pass. But then when she comes, she's involving aside from being glued to her phone. There were times where set dates in advance to ask for help to attend events, etc., not often, or a date to have time with my fiancé. She will save it, and then within 2 weeks, I remind the dates and she ends up having a plan. One time she prioritized helping clean the boat with friends. I won't discredit, sometimes she is helped. But the hassle of other times weighs in. She is a free woman, I can't control her. She's hooking up with new guys every month recently while entertaining one, which is wild to me, because my dad had 4 affairs. I don't appreciate it, but I can't control that aspect, and what she does in her free time. But I will add, she's here with the kids, every time she excuses herself to go talk on the phone with one. It caused turmoil, anxiety within me between my fiancé and her. He spoke his disapproval to her, and she had her own thoughts. She's been pushy about wanting to take my oldest 2.5-year-old to a park. Her reasoning, well, I'm his grandmother, but I feel she doesn't earn that privilege to take any of my kids. I just don't feel comfortable with anyone driving my kids besides me or my fiancé, unless it's an emergency. She's also very oblivious. She could push my 7-year-old in a stroller, get in a convo with someone and the stroller would be next to her, and I could confidently take my own child out without her noticing. Let's not get started on a local kid place 5 miles from me has a month ago. I can provide more context in the comment if topics are asked. I don't know how to feel, if it's worth stressing over all the time or forcing something that maybe isn't there. Story, Wibda, if I didn't let my mother walk me down the aisle. I am 22 years old and getting married to 25 years old my fiancé's next April. We are having a very untraditional wedding, think fairies meet lightsaber, and I am super excitedly planning everything on my own because we have a small wedding budget. 59 years old, my mom was invited to be a part of the wedding planning to help me out a bit because I am chronically ill and there are some things I physically cannot do. But this has become a bit of a problem. As a bit of context, 52 years old, my dad left when I was 3. My mom raised me and my brother alone in a very impoverished community, and she always did her best to take care of us. She was always a bit controlling, but sometimes when you are a kid you need that sort of structure, so I understand looking back. But when I grew up, the controlling aspects of her personality did not stop. This all came to a bit of a head last year, when my then boyfriend and I moved in together. She insisted that we would never get married if we did this. When we got engaged 3 months later, she insisted we were taking things too fast. And got very angry at me, yelling at me for making the same mistakes she did. She had been married 3 times. And then, a month later, when her sister found out we were living together, she decided we needed to go ahead and get hitched so we wouldn't be living in sin. All of this I chalked up to be my mother being controlling like she always was. I have learned to ignore it for the most part. But she recently has crossed a line. As previously mentioned, I am chronically ill, and I am getting a lot of medical tests and things done and am trying to get treatment to mitigate some of the pain and fatigue I currently have. Recently, after a trip to the ER, I called my mom to inform her of what was going on and she began insisting that fiancé would leave me if I continued to act as sick as I do. She has also mocked every single choice I've made about the wedding that would make the day easier for me. I was rightly very upset by this, as I do not have control over my own body and have been dealing with debilitating symptoms since I still lived with her. She is now discussing some very personal parts of my health journey, including my menstrual cycle, with family friends I have not had contact with for years. When I tried to confront her about disclosing such personal details of my health and body, she insisted that she was in the right and that I was just being hateful to her like I always am since I met fiancé. My mother was going to walk me down the aisle while my father was going to officiate. He is a minister, so it was a nice way to keep the peace between my parents, but now I am not sure I want her to talk me down the aisle because she is only causing me stress and grief about my relationship with my mother. I am also not sure who I would get to walk me down the aisle if it wasn't her, but I know that I cannot maintain the relationship as it currently stands, so I don't know what to do. Story, if I take my inheritance and leave my husband and stepson. I've been with 48 years old my husband for 13 years. We have 4 kids. 2 are his from his first marriage, 19 years old and 16 years old. I have one 14 years old son from a previous relationship, and we share one 8 years old daughter. The 16 and 14-year-old live with their other parent in Ontario. Up until 2 years ago, I was the breadwinner. I still make decent money from my e-commerce business, but now my husband makes good money too. 2 years ago we moved for work. Nothing was available in our small town. However, over the last year or two my husband and step 19 years old son have really changed. They were both once very liberal-leaning and now have both come out as staunch conservatives. My stepson is basically an involuntary celibate. My love for my husband died in the moment he told me they would be voting conservative. I cannot fathom loving or being intimate with a man that doesn't view his wife or daughters as equals. I've tried explaining to him the implications of voting conservative in Canada and how his daughters could very well lose access to abortion and bodily autonomy, birth control. He says I'm stupid and gullible and am just falling for liberal propaganda. I've asked if we could go to couples therapy. But he's made it clear he won't go to therapy, and he won't talk about it reasonably. He either explodes calling me all sorts of names or gives me the silent treatment for days. For the last few years I've talked non-stop about getting my dual citizenship and moving to Italy, my homeland, to be with family when my mom dies. She has terminal cancer. I'm an only child and my mother kept me from my Italian family, so I've always felt homesick for a place I've never been. Unfortunately, my husband has always been against it, but I have hoped that with time he might come around. My mom is dying, and I know I'll be soon getting an inheritance. As sad as I am for her passing, in some ways I'm grateful because it will give me the resources I need to leave and rebuild. In my province in Canada, inheritances are protected and not seen as family property. I checked with 3 lawyers so my husband wouldn't be entitled to it. Our daughter is 8, but is learning Italian and loves the idea of living on a farm in Italy with her Italian family and dozens of cousins, the kind of family and support we don't have here. I don't know what I would do if he said she couldn't come. I've been her primary caregiver since birth, but she is very close with her father. I've been in contact with the Italian family for a few years and they have said they would love for us to come to Italy. Side note, I have my heart set on Italy for many reasons, one of them being access to abortion healthcare. It doesn't appear to be up for debate or at risk of being lost like in Canada and the US. This is important to me because when I was 18 my firstborn died in utero. I was sent home to wait for labor. Labor never came and I went septic and required abortion care to live. I cannot imagine living somewhere that abortion care isn't healthcare. Husband, stepson have came out as staunch conservatives after 13 years. Not open to discussing or changing. I want to know if I would be an asshole if I fucked off to Italy with my daughter and my inheritance. It's comical to me the men are mad, but the fact is I would have never dated, married or had a child with my husband had I known he was conservative. I am not conservative, will never be conservative. I would have chosen to have abortion over having a child with a conservative. Story, AITA for saying being a stay-at-home wife is a job. I, 25-year-old, was talking to my boyfriend, 26-year-old, about how I've been feeling drained lately because I feel like I do everything around the house. I work a full-time job Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and often work overtime. I also have a very small business on the side which brings in some extra money every now and then. I live with my boyfriend and he works a full-time job overnight, also with overtime. He expects me to cook, clean, grocery shop, and do everything in between on top of working full-time. When I explained that it's draining, he says he gets it and he helps out sometimes. Most of the time though, it's still all up to me to figure out how I feel and get everything done. Lately I've gotten past the point of being drained and moved into full-blown exhaustion. I agreed that I could take full-time care of the house and other tasks if I didn't need to work, but because I do, I expect more help around the house and he feels like it's not his job as the man. I can admit that I have let the condition of the house spiral a bit because of my exhaustion and feeling unsupported. He feels like as a woman, I should want to take care of everything. He thinks exhaustion is understandable for like a week but not long-term. He thinks because my job is hybrid, that I have time when I'm working from home to do odd tasks around the house, and he won't admit to downplaying my job and saying it's easy just because it can be done at home. I feel like he doesn't want to understand how I feel because he wants to be right. I feel like as partners he should want to help more. I pay bills just like he does. I go out and work full-time just like he does. He should be able to cook and clean and grocery shop like me. He suggested me just cleaning up after myself to make it fair, but he doesn't realize how much of a mess he makes on his own. I'm uncertain of what else to say. In our last discussion, he advised me to speak with a married woman to understand if being a stay-at-home wife can be considered employment, as he could not explain it as a man. Married women, what are your thoughts? Am I wrong in believing that being a stay-at-home wife is a job? Am I the asshole? Is it fair for me to work full-time and handle the majority, if not all, of the chores with little to no assistance? Story, AITA for telling my partner I don't care about his family vacation. My partner and I have known each other for about 3 years, but we've only been dating for 2. Originally from a smaller town, I moved in with my partner in a bigger city in 2023 when things got serious. My partner never officially came out to his parents. It was a case of we just kind of know, but aren't talking about it. When I moved in, he called his parents and reaffirmed that he was gay, dating me, and that I had moved in. They told him they needed time to process the situation, which I can understand. Fast forward to today, and I still haven't officially met his family, although he's met mine and is very close with them. The only time I've met them was at a wedding where we glanced at each other from across the room. His dad introduced himself but left right after. Sometimes it is awkward. For example, he will be on the phone with his mom or dad and I immediately stop what I'm doing and don't say anything or go to another room because I don't want to make things weird. I've brought this up to my partner before. He is usually empathetic and says he'll plan something so we can meet, but it never happens. His family lives about 45 minutes away from us. My family, because I moved, is now 5.5 hours away. So, it just sucks that much more because I don't have my family to go to it easily at least. To his defense, when he visits, talks to his family, he does tell me that they do ask about me, mostly his mom. But that only goes so far. Every year, they go on a family vacation for a week, my partner, his parents, his sister, and her husband. I stay behind. Last year, I understood why I couldn't go since I had just moved in 4 months prior. But this year, it's hitting me hard since it's been over a year, and his family hasn't made any effort to get to know me. I have to spend another week alone at home, and it hurts that his sister and her partner are included though they are a straight couple. My partner has been sending me snaps of the vacation. I told him that I'm glad he's having fun, but that I don't care to see or hear about it. I hate to make him feel a certain way during his vacation, but I think I'm justified in my response. Story, AITA my friend is having an affair, we plan to tell her husband. I've known 38-years-old Anna since we were in high school. We are part of a group of 5. Now we hang out as families for Christmas, birthdays, Easter, etc. It has been like this for over 10 years. My partner Greg, 39 years old, is good friends with 39-years-old Anna's husband Darren. Anna recently told me she is having an affair with one of their family friends, who is also Darren's sister's ex-partner. At the time, I remained non-judgmental and supportive. Once the information set in and I realized how disloyal and gross the whole situation is, my sense of justice and moral compass came into play. Darren is a good man. Anna says he is a wonderful father and husband, but she just doesn't feel the connection with him anymore despite faking it the last 6 months to keep her secret under wraps. I knew keeping this from Greg may backfire on me if he found out I also hid the secret, so I told him. He is shattered for his mate, and it is eating at him. I've told Anna that Greg knows. She's pissed at me for the betrayal, expecting me to take it to my grave. She knows they're catching up soon and Greg plans to tell him. Anna has not asked for a separation because they have an overseas trip coming up in October. She has told me financially that she can't leave. Keeping in mind, She regularly gets expensive treatments like Botox and taking roids to have her look her best. We want to tell Darren about her affair in 2 weeks. Will we be the assholes? Story: AITA for breaking things off with a man who increasingly gave me the ick. So to start this off, I am so sorry if this is long and messy and drawn out. I'm bad at this and just socializing in general. I am 32 years old, met a man 41 years old, who right off the bat came off very strong with his want to get to know me. Although in the beginning it was a little weird. I went with it thinking that maybe I'm the problem and I need to give people a chance. But as time progressed, his mannerisms became more difficult to deal with. Especially the way he speaks, which comes off as very ingenuine. He also always had corrections for anything I would say. Often telling me the right thing to do is such, and if we don't want others to interfere, we have to do things wrong. Which to me is already weird and icky, because we are adults, so who are these people who have any type of say in a relationship? Next, things like the way he would kiss me while making like a weird whimpering noise that gives me second-hand embarrassment and cringe even typing about it, or how he would push PDA when I've explained 1,000 times that it makes me uncomfortable. During anything intimate, I would feel very, very creeped out. He would call me and leave messages about how he needs me to top him off in the extreme detail. Just everything would make me feel so creeped out and so icky. Gosh, I sound like an awful human. But I just couldn't shake this icky feeling. He would try to push his ideal of who I am and how God picked me for him as a wife. Instead of it being cute or sweet, it was just too soon and too much. Including him trying to convince me to run away with him and get married and move in together. A couple of times he screamed at me, wrote me incredibly hurtful paragraphs. Went so far as blocking me. Then would tell his guy friends a completely different version of what happened, making me look crazy, and would laugh about it as he would tell me. So as this continued, I began to be more and more withdrawn. I am already quite introverted. I am also autistic. He would make me feel stupid and as if I am faking my medical diagnosis and that I need to work on myself to be better. He would complain about how quiet I am, but correct me, and then everything I would say into a personal attack. I once mentioned that I was super upset when my parents forced us to move in March. He took this personally and stated that it was insensitive for me to say that to him, and that because I met him it should have changed my mind about moving from my home of 30 years. I also made a statement about how men are gross due to some TikToks about men's hygiene, and I was laughing about it, and he took it extremely personally and lectured me about how cleanly he is and how he has handled sanitizer in his car and blah blah blah. Honestly, it became so exhausting just having any type of conversation with him. I tried multiple times to explain to him that I feel like he thinks I am broken and is trying to fix me and mold me to be his ideal partner, and I cannot be that. He asked me for space when I was being very withdrawn. So I gave it to him. Which then resulted in him telling me he wants more from me in the relationship. Like what? I then hit my last straw when he had a screaming outburst again and unblocked me. I stopped responding to phone calls and texts. The last time we saw each other, spoke etc. was almost a month ago. But I finally bit the bullet and spoke to him and let him know that I think we are incompatible and that I don't have energy for the relationship and I just don't think it will work out. Clearly he was quite angry and began to get loud. I said I don't want to argue and I hope you have a great day, and hung up. Story: AITA for calling the police on my ex who threw away my things without telling me. My former 19-years-old boyfriend and I am 19 years old separated a few months ago, and it was on bitter terms from his end. I attempted to communicate about the situation as it could easily have been resolved, but to no avail. I gave up eventually on that part eventually, but at this point he was still in possession of my belongings. This included a digital single-lens reflex camera containing an SD card that has very important memories of family members that have passed on, that I've since lost contact with, and other major life events. As a result, I have been attempting to contact him to retrieve my things. He initially told me that had 2 weeks to collect my things before he'd throw them away May 21st, but he lives quite far from me and I was also in an exam period. I asked him therefore to hold on to my belongings at least until the end of my exams. I gave him the date June 21st that I would become available so that I could make arrangements to collect them. He told me then that he'd block me after I came to collect my things, which I understood but took to mean that he'd acknowledged my request. He'd then go back and forth arguing and getting upset about the relationship situation and sending numerous angry messages, so eventually I stopped responding for my own sake. This then led to him removing me on all social media, so I blocked him on there as some of my accounts are public and I'd rather he be put off watching what I was doing or posting. The main medium of communication we used was text messaging, so I of course kept that available in case he needed to contact me regarding me collecting my things, and after not hearing anything, I decided to contact him myself to ask if I could pick them up on the 13th of July. I was met with a lot of anger and hostility and was then consequently blocked. My friends offered to come with me to attempt to pick up my things from his address directly by asking the front desk of his apartment building to contact him as he would be keeping my things without my consent. At the time he wasn't in, so seemed to have agreed to leave my belongings with reception, so I left my details so I could be contacted to collect them. He then went on to call reception back after I left to claim that I was his stalker and shouldn't be allowed on the premises. I also received some abusive messages from what I assume are friends of his and over 30 anonymous calls within an hour after this. I then called the police to report the incident as it was a last resort, and they told me that unless he admits that he's either in possession of the item, has disposed of it, or has sold it, they couldn't do anything. They recommended that I contact him to give him a formal notice of 14 days to return my belongings, and he then admitted that he has disposed of them without my consent or knowledge as of 3 weeks after the 2 weeks given sometime around June 11th and without agreeing to a date on which I could collect my things. As he's now admitted to disposing of my belongings and identified in his messages that I'm the owner, the police let me know that they will be contacting both me and him regarding my camera. Have I done the right thing here? What could I do now? I'm still distraught about the loss of those memories, but could I get some retribution given my situation? Story, Wibda for thinking my girlfriend blames her ADHD for everything and it is starting to affect our relationship. I'm 18-year-old and I have been in a relationship with my girlfriend, who is also 18, for around 10 months. For some background information, I have a close male friend whom I'll call Jay. He used to have feelings for me when we first met, but I turned him down. Despite this, we remained friends. A few months later, I started dating my friend's friend, who is now my girlfriend. When we first started dating, I told her that I was not open about being bisexual to anyone besides my close friends. However, my girlfriend is open about her sexuality. At first, I told her that I didn't want anyone at school or the teachers to know about my sexuality because my parents were not aware of it. Despite this, she ended up telling the teachers and some of my classmates anyway. When I confronted her about it, she said it was because of her ADHD, so I decided to let it go. About 3 months ago, people at my school started asking if Jay and I were a couple. Even though we're both in relationships, they're surprised when we say that because every time they see us hanging out and laughing, they think we're a couple. My girlfriend keeps bringing up how people in our grade think Jay and I should date, and it's starting to get on my nerves. I always assure her that nothing will happen between Jay and me because we don't have feelings for each other. I always make sure to tell her I love her, but she keeps talking about it and it's starting to bother me. Because it's all she ever talks about. But I tell her the same thing every time, that I do not have feelings for him but only her. My girlfriend seems more interested in my body than in who I am. She often makes sexual comments about my body, and when I ask her to stop, she continues. When I talk to her about this behavior, she blames it on her attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Additionally, when she gets jealous of me spending time with my close friend, Jay, she becomes physically aggressive with me or him and demands that he move away from me. Even when he complies and sits somewhere away from her, she still insists that he move. When I ask her about this, because he is both of our friends, she causes a scene in class or calls out to the teacher until my friend leaves to find another seat all the way in the back of class. Once, when I was joking about making out, she said that we really should because we haven't, and she called me boring. I felt pressured to do it with her even though I didn't want to because I didn't want to be seen as boring. And when summer started, she never texted me anymore, and when she did, she asked me for nude pictures of myself. I told her no multiple times until I said I was uncomfortable with it. After that, she texted me a couple of times and then just stopped. She hasn't texted me since. Which she also blames on her attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And with all the time alone to ponder my relationship with her, I'm starting to feel like I don't want to be with her anymore. But I have never had these thoughts before. Am I the jerk for thinking like this? Story, AITA for leaving my boyfriend. I am 21 years old, have been dating 22 years old my boyfriend for 5 years, and I had moved in with him and his family when I was 17 as my dad and brother had moved across the country. When we first met, I was skinny and beautiful and had a list of guys chasing after me, and he was the sweet good guy who I knew would never cheat on me. Over the years, I gained some weight due to hormonal birth control and other medications, but my boyfriend told me he preferred me this way, and that I looked so much healthier now. We are high school sweethearts, and have always planned on getting married. About 3 years ago, I found him messaging random girls on Discord with random pickup lines. I was a wreck, but he explained that him and his friends were doing it as a funny prank. I forgave him and we moved on. Early 2022, my dad was put in the hospital, where he spent over 6 months due to a blood clot in his intestines. The doctors had to remove a majority of his intestines, leaving him to have an ostomy bag. For the first couple of months, my dad was in very critical condition. I received many calls from my aunts who lived closest to my dad telling me the doctors said he had less than 24 hours. My dad, the fighter that he is, persevered, and I was able to take time off of work to fly out to visit him. Many of my relatives told me that that would be the last time I would be able to see him. After I returned home, I found out that my boyfriend had an OnlyFans account. He had been paying to subscribe to other women, and even messaged to ask for their Snapchat and for AD rating. To my knowledge, he never actually followed through. We had not been intimate for about a year when I learned of this. I was heartbroken and consulted with a therapist on how to proceed. With the help of my therapist, I decided to forgive my boyfriend and work on our relationship. After many conversations, my boyfriend informed me that he had officially deleted his OnlyFans, and that he would never do it again. About 6 months later, I found that he had a secret TikTok account that he would subscribe to women, like in favorite videos, etc. I would find him liking pictures of skimpy women on TikTok and Instagram, and it would always turn into a big fight because none of them ever looked like me. The summer of last year, my dad passed away. It was the hardest thing I have had to deal with, as my dad was my best friend and my rock. I flew across the country to visit my dad in the hospital before he passed, and me and my siblings had to make the hard decision to pull the plug, as my dad had gone into cardiac arrest and was considered brain dead. I flew my boyfriend across country to be with me and to be able to attend the funeral in June. We returned home, and I was so grateful to have a partner who was there for me. In August, I found out that he had created another OnlyFans. His excuse was that he wasn't paying this time, and he never messaged anyone, so it was the same thing as looking at Pornhub. I admit, after this, I went full-blown psycho. I scoured his emails, all social medias, and even Google Docs. I found a Google Docs with a list of porn stars, Instagram models, TikTokers, and URLs for porn. He swears to me that he never pleasured himself to any of it. I don't mind if he watches porn, but subscribing to OnlyFans and favoriting skimpy videos just feels different to me. It's been a year now, and I cannot stand to be with him any longer. I've moved out and am trying to focus on myself. He won't let me leave. I tried to end things at the end of May, when I officially moved out. I told his mom everything he had done, and she said that she was shocked. This boy has made me hate everything about myself. How do I cut ties for good? Every time we talk, he breaks down and tells me that he should just die and that he is a burden to everyone in his life. I've told him we're on a break until he can prove to me that he has made a positive change in his behaviors for good. His family has been texting me telling me how much they love and miss me, inviting me to family event. Am I the asshole for leaving him because he betrayed me when I needed him the most, or am I just overreacting because he at least didn't cheat on me? Story: AITA for keeping my son away from my in-laws. I am 22 years old female and my ex 25 years old male had our son in early October of 2023. For privacy purposes we are going to call my ex, Justin. Justin and I always had a great relationship with each other. In the beginning everything was great, we were a perfect couple. Our families loved us and often invited us to family gatherings. His parents, let's call them Jessica and Michael, and stepdad, let's call him Kevin, never got along with each other. A little backstory: Justin's parents separated when he was 16 due to an affair that Jessica had with Kevin while still married to Michael. Michael and Kevin were best friends, so I understand why Michael can't be around both of them. As a side note, that Michael and Jessica had Justin when they were in their early 20s. Justin lived with mother, so I often hang out at his mother's apartment. Jessica and I got along really well until the day I found out I was pregnant. When Justin found out, he was shocked and so was I. We both talked about it and it was a tough decision whether to keep our baby or not. Obviously we decided to keep our baby and start a family of our own. We announced the pregnancy when I was 2 months pregnant. My family was very supportive, however when it came Justin's side of the family it didn't go so well. Jessica and Kevin were not as supportive as they talked to Justin privately then talked to me. They suggested for me to rethink my choices and get the abortion. Justin and I explained that we already had a talk about it for a while, then we decided that we want to start a family of our own. Jessica didn't take this very well and told me I will become a single mom if I don't rethink my choices about keeping the baby. I was hurt when she said this to me, so I sternly said I'm sorry, but we are keeping our baby. She stood silent and the rest of the time being there with her was awkward. A week later she decided to kick Justin out and demanded that Justin lives with me since we want to keep our baby. I would, but I live in my family's home, so I can't take him in immediately out of respect for my family. I explained to her exactly that and was very upset, saying that Justin had a week to pack his things and leave her home. Long story short, Justin ended up living with his dad until the birth of our son. 2 weeks before my due date we held a baby shower. Michael throughout the pregnancy was helpful with Justin and helped organize the baby shower. Jessica and Kevin of course was not invited out of respect for Michael. Jessica blamed Justin and I for not inviting them, even though I have suggested to have 2 baby showers so she isn't left out. She said that we are the reason the family is not together. Jessica soon stopped keeping contact with Justin and only talked to him when she is updating him on his credit card payments he needs to pay since she is using it. The day on our son's birth everyone got to meet him, including Jessica and Kevin. I asked everyone to not post my son on social media, but pictures are allowed. Jessica knew this and posted him on her Instagram anyways. I was extremely upset and asked Justin to talk to her about it and respect my boundaries. Justin moved in with me and my family. His dad and my family has done a lot for us, as it takes a village to raise a baby. My family got Justin a well-paying job and my dad even lent him money to be certified for that well-paying job. However, Jessica still continues to disrespect my boundaries. I had some rules that baby was not allowed to go to public places until he was 6 months old, since he would be vaccinated already and getting sick wasn't a risk for him. My son was born in a cold weather month and near holidays. So I understand how going out to family gatherings with a newborn can be difficult, but I made it clear that visitation is allowed but only family members, just that our baby cannot go out yet since he at the time wasn't vaccinated yet. The only time he will be out is when he has a doctor's visit. From there, Justin and I constantly argue about his mother, since he was always defending her, and about how he is not helping me with the baby. I developed postpartum depression, so I often was in a bad mood. One day Jessica was going off about me gatekeeping her grandson and doesn't want to visit our home since she is running her thrift store business and is too busy to come by. I went completely off on Jessica. I was so fed up with her disrespectful behavior around me and constantly disrespects my boundaries for my son. That same day Justin came home with both Mark and Jessica, grabbed his things, left me and our son. I became a single mom raising my son alone. Justin hardly asked about our son. At one point he took me to court for a retraining order to try to take away our son from me with no visitation rights, saying I was unstable to be a parent even though my postpartum depression was treated and I've gone to therapy. The order was denied since there was no proof of me being a threat. His parents support him leaving our son. So I filed for child support, joint legal custody and sole physical custody to me, with Justin having visitation rights. I am not one to keep my child away from his father regardless on what happened between us. My family and I respects Justin as my son's father and still welcome him to see our son, but he doesn't make the effort to. Michael, Jessica and Kevin are all of a sudden friends during this whole process. I decided to also file that those three are not allowed to see or contact my son until he is the age 18. His family members think it is not fair, but my family are with me with it. Story, AITA for ending my relationship over outside circumstances. I need help navigating a rather complicated situation. So me, 36-year-old, and my boyfriend, 29-year-old, have been together for 7 months. We are currently doing long distance, as I had to move back to Canada at the end of April, due to shitty circumstances out of my control. My boyfriend is currently living in Texas, which is where I'd lived for 10 years. The reason I had to move back to Canada was because my visa had expired in October 2023. I'd accidentally overstayed 6 months in the US and was technically illegal. My parents were the ones who discovered that when they were going through all our travel documents. Since I am blind and cannot read the printed documents, I had absolutely no idea that I'd overstayed. Me and my boyfriend were actually supposed to move in together later this year. We'd had it all planned out for months, but then my life unexpectedly flipped overnight and I lost everything. IDK if I'll be able to return to the US in the foreseeable future, given the circumstances in which I had to leave. A lot of people had tried to tell me to just marry my boyfriend for a green card, and that seriously got on my nerves. I'm sure those people meant well, but alas, they didn't understand the complexities of immigration. Marriage is not the answer to everything, despite what society thinks. It just goes to show how misinformation gets spread so quickly, especially in America. Me and my boyfriend are also super anti-legal marriage, so this would have gone against our beliefs and values. I'd also heard horror stories from my fellow international students in grad school about how ICE actually has the authority to peep through your windows at all hours of the night, just to make sure that your marriage is legit. That's creepy AF to me, and I would never dream of putting my boyfriend and his family in a position where their peace and privacy would be disturbed. My boyfriend and his mom were also struggling to make ends meet. They could barely afford dog food some days, much less support a foreign spouse with a disability. I actually found out from a childhood friend of mine that even marriage doesn't guarantee you anything permanent. My friend is Canadian and had married an American citizen in 2020. He was given a temporary green card when he married his wife. He was told that he'd have to wait for permanent residency, and that could take years. Sadly, my friend's marriage had ended in divorce 2 years later because his wife had cheated, so in the end he had no choice but to move back to Canada. In any case, I've always thought that the antiquated institution of legal marriage was a super scummy trap. The thought of being legally tied to somebody makes me physically sick. I refuse to be someone's property, and I don't want them to be mine either. We don't need a piece of paper to legitimize our love and commitment. Furthermore, the sleazy government doesn't need to know who I'm sleeping with. I'm scared that me and my boyfriend's relationship might not be able to survive this. The thought of breaking up over outside circumstances makes me sick, but I don't think it can be helped, given the situation. This was the unfortunate case of right guy, wrong time. My boyfriend is currently dealing with a complicated situation of his own and can't leave the US for a while, so visits aren't even an option for us right now. So, would it be unfair to keep holding on to a relationship given that our future has so many unknown variables? For the record, I am not interested seeing other people, and neither is he. I've had a few talks with his mom, which he doesn't know about, and she said that he's been really upset and depressed for the last few months. He and I have talked on the phone and FaceTimed since I've been back in Canada, and it's just so sad for both of us. At this point, we're not sure when, or even if we will see each other again. His mom doesn't think that it's healthy for either of us to stay together right now, and honestly, I get where she's coming from. I seriously love this woman and consider her the mother I never had. Therefore, I have a lot of respect for her. I have a feeling that I will probably have to be the one to initiate the breakup. The good news is that my boyfriend does want to move to Canada eventually, as he hates living in the US, especially Texas. Even though it's not in the cards for him right now, perhaps it will be someday, but unfortunately that will be later rather than sooner. Story: AITA for considering leaving my husband because he wants to get rid of my pets. My husband, 32 years old, and I am 30 years old, have been married for 6 years. We have a 4-year-old kid together, but we have been living like roommates ever since she was born. When we first met, I had 3 cats and a dog, and he seemed to love them and would even buy them treats to give them when he came over. Now he hates them. A few years ago, with a heavy heart, I gave one of my cats to a friend, and my parents took my dog for 2 years to relieve some stress for us as we had just given birth. After 2 years, they wanted to give her back, which I don't mind because I love her so much, but my husband is very unhappy about. He always complains about how much buying them wet food costs, and he keeps saying, "Promise me you'll only give them one a day," but one of my cats has hardly any teeth, so he has to eat only wet food. And wet food isn't even that expensive. We're paying about $10 a week for cat food. But he's stressing so much about trying to buy a house, which is impossible RN, so I understand he's stressed about money. We both work, but he owns a business and works 7 days a week because he's so stressed about money. We've been wanting to have another child, don't know how that would happen considering we've only slept together once since our 4-year-old was born. He says he's too stressed to think about sex, but he said his deal is we can't have another baby until I get rid of 2 pets who are like family to me. I'm afraid we will never agree on this subject. He will never be happy while we have pets, and I'll never want to give them up. It's been causing so much trouble, we fight constantly, and I feel like I've been living in a loveless marriage for 4 years. He claims everything he does is for us, and that's why he works so hard, and that's how he shows his love. We make enough money to live comfortably and not want for anything. We also have $70,000 in stock, but this is still not enough to be able to afford a house in the area we are living now. My 2 cats are rescues, and one clearly has a trauma background and is very scared and skittish. He scares them on purpose and whacks them and wakes them up whenever he walks past, and I've begged him to stop for years, but he still bothers them all the time. He also has asthma, but his main issue is not pet hair, it's that he's working too much and not getting enough rest and is overweight. There is also no cat hair in the room he sleeps in. Yes, we sleep in separate rooms because of his work schedule, because there are no pets allowed in his room, so the pet hair isn't really an issue. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.